Hey folks, as you can see today I am jumping in with the hashtag 5 tarot deck challenge, which was adapted from a book tag I believe, and it was adapted by the lovely A Riffle in Time. Yes, this is an older one, but I thought it would be fun. As the month of April currently stands, I'm working with an early copy of a deck which I will be doing like an early review / preview of at the end of April, and therefore I'm kind of saving a lot of my YouTube focus for that because I'm also working loads on May's Patreon. So for the time being, I'm just jumping in with fun hashtags otherwise so that I don't take up too much brain power, and also so that I can cut loose and have a little fun. I really like this one, and whilst I'm late to the party, I watched a lot of the tarot and the oracle renditions. I'm doing the tarot one today. If you enjoy it, perhaps I'll do the oracle one as well. I'm using a different phone to film today, so hopefully it's going to go smoothly. Oh, and also, if you want to see what deck it is that is going to be previewed at the end of the month, then check out my community tab because I have shared it there. So let's get into it. The first question is, show us the tarot deck that you're currently using. And it's in here because this baggie actually comes with it, even though it's mass market, which is good because the deck is split into 2 halves, which I don't enjoy. Now, this is a French deck. I'm not going to pronounce it in French because I would absolutely butcher it. But if you've watched my spring decks selection and practice, then you'll know that I have pared down and I'm really trying to focus on certain decks. And I am freaking loving this one so much. It took me ages to find an oracle that I enjoyed using it with. And now that I've done that, and it feels like it's a season where I really want to work with it, it's just come into its own. It's quite funny because I'm not a massively seasonal deck person. However, the fact that everything is sprouting and there's this kind of almost grungy vibe still, it does feel like the transition between winter and spring to me, just aesthetically, but also that's very much what I'm experiencing, and I think mentally I'm experiencing it as much as I am in the environment. Aside from its large card stock, it's quite bendy and most things are difficult for me to shuffle unless they're small, but yeah, I'm really enjoying this mix. The characters don't feel too imposing. There's something about the body language that feels kind of ritualistic to me. I don't know. It's a hard one to explain, but it feels like it has a little bit of a witchy vibe. I'm really struggling to explain it other than just to say that I am freaking enjoying it. I really love the artwork. When she gifted me this deck ages back, she actually gifted me a separate piece of artwork, and I love it. I had it up at my old place on the altar for such a long time. It's just something really familiar, really nourishing about this deck in particular, and it's another one that I find sort of meets me in that mixture of analysis and embodiment, which is a nice place to be. So I am having the best time with this one at the moment. The next is, show us your last 5-star tarot deck. This is actually in a box in a bag, which I never do, but I don't know, it just feels like it's extra protected this way. And just a heads up, this is entirely out of print, but it is my most recent 5-star. And so I am going to gush about it still because for me this was an incredibly special deck because it has all of my native trees and animals in it. It reflects Britain beautifully. I'm sure that there are other Europeans who find a lot of this familiar as well. But this is just so homely, so familiar, and it brings with it that kind of intimacy of practice. Whilst I do work with animals from all over the globe, I do a lot of research, I do a lot of studies, and there are facets of metaphor and myth and spirit, and also just the educational facets that are an integral part of animal gnosis, there is still something so potent about working with the wildlife that is native. And I often say this to other people, not to box them in, but there's something different about it. Or if it's not a native animal, perhaps it might be a pet, you know, because I know that some of us have exotic, so I have a leopard gecko. But besides the point, I love the cardstock on this because it's thin, and you know, I've eaten my words many times before. I miss the really thin satin finished Llywelyn cardstock, and this feels very similar to me. It's actually got a nicer finish, and it's somewhat reminiscent of when you get decks like Coastal Curiosities with linen, except from it doesn't have the linen finish. I appreciate the linen finish is now just a finish, and I know that this is all more to do with thickness and core, but anyway, there's also that element to it. It's familiar, it's nourishing, it's been a whole surprise because it's so colourful, and I've said before, artistically, I wasn't too sure, but then look, my two of my favourite representations, foxgloves and the red fox. I'm just having an absolute moment with this deck. It has brought something so enriching into my private animal practice, which I've been seeking for a long time, as someone who found British animals in mainly oracle decks, but didn't really get that tarot fix. One of the reasons that I was able to join in on this tag is because I actually have a deck for this next question, which is really unusual for me if you know how I function and, you know, rotate my deck collection. So you'll know that when I don't use things, they tend to leave sort of swiftly. I've slowed it down a bit, but they leave. And the next question is, show us a tarot deck that you keep putting off using and you need help making yourself use it. I'm not sure that I need help. I thought that this tarot bag was quite a cute match. I actually got gifted this by the creator of the bags. It was around the time that I got this tarot deck, which is also, at least this copy is out of print. And that is the original Mythic tarot. And basically, I grew up with this deck as well as the Medicine Woman tarot. This was one of my mum's other decks, and then she got me my own copy of it. And then when I was in my mid-teens, I think it was, the devil card completely up and disappeared, and when we moved house it still was nowhere to be found. So don't know what happened there. I did used to read for friends with it, but it doesn't strike me as the sort of thing any of my friends would have done. Taken one of my tarot cards. Anyway, I got rid of the deck because I didn't have the foresight or the sense to think that I might be able to replace it in the future. This is the third copy of this that I've had, because every time I buy it, something is up. And it's the same with this one. This one is actually, the cards come split as it always has been, but they are two different cuts. It's almost like they're from two different deck printings. So, I mean, that happens with mass market decks, right? But anyway, it's not fun to hold because of that, but also I have not had the desire to pick it up since. There's my pal. I actually really love this devil card. I don't work with the Greek pantheon too much, really, in honesty, but I've said before, we get taught it a lot in the schools over here. We did in my generation anyway. And I'm very familiar with it and I'm interested in it. It's just not something I use in my practice. It's more something that I know and have an interest in as well. But I don't know if I'm trying to recreate something. I really missed having that other deck that my mum had got me. We're estranged, and that's not going to change, but it feels like a part of my tarot history, but of course this one isn't. And yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to see. I can't mod decks before anyone tells me to do so. It really hurts my hands and the chronic pain thing, but anyway. 2 different sizes, but I don't want to get rid of it too early, too preemptively, because I'm considering getting rid of a significant portion of decks at the moment as is, and this artwork really does remind me of being little, so there is something nostalgic there, but not using it, which is, like I said, strange. Maybe it will have its time. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts and musings? Feel free to share. Moving swiftly on, as I'm eternally rambly, show us a tarot deck that you feel is very underrated on TarotTube. I am going to go for underrated, as I don't feel like there wasn't lots of love for this deck, but I want more. I want to see it more, I want to hear more about it, and yes, I am eternally biased because my dearest friend, Larkin Legend, aka Logan, made this. This is their first tarot creation, although they are a prolific Lenormand creator. So if you like Lenormand especially, check that out. But aside from the quality, the aesthetic, you know, all of the wonderful things that I enjoy about this deck, I hear people talking about pips with feeling and you know, finding ways to use pip decks, perhaps either not directly 𝗪𝗂𝗍, or finding that combination between a more pippish deck and the 𝗪𝗂𝗍𝗁, that kind of energy. And yes, it has a 𝗵𝘀𝗁𝗀 card, which if you don't watch 3 Girls and 1 Deck, what are you doing? But they was actually talking about the 𝗵𝘀𝗁𝗀 cards in one of their recent videos. So if you're wondering, this deck also has one. It also has several options for justice and strength, not only the numbers but also the representations. So there's some extra cards just to keep everyone happy. Not a lot of deck creators do that. You know, that's a lot of extra time, effort and money for the extra cards. In fact, I have them here behind the booklet, so you can see these are all the ones that aren't in use, because I have my favourites in there and they're very unlikely to change. But I find this to be a wonderful pip deck for people to learn more about reading with the element and the numerology, but also still having some kind of storytelling facet to them. It's been simplified. It's encouraging you to look and pay attention. It's still not boxing anything in though, for the most part. And I just really appreciate that. There's a lot of diversity, whilst it's kind of fantasy based. There's a lot of mixing of gender expressions throughout the courts, and yeah, just a lot of inclusivity that could be easily missed because it's pippish, but it is in there. It is in there for the significant cards. And I love this for the Hierophant. It's a really, really good deck, and I don't feel like anyone's ever going to believe me when I say this, but I've said it to Logan as well. If I had no relationship with them whatsoever, I would have still really been impressed with and still really loved this creation. It's definitely my aesthetic. It's like a grungy unicorn. Like occasionally I want a little hollow, but just I wouldn't wear it. I'd like wear all black and have holographic nails. That's just kind of my vibe. It's good quality, but it reads so well and so easily. You'll probably see a lot of this come autumn and winter. I want to use it every time I touch it, but honestly, I'm really trying to be good and use my spring collection. I realise I've shown predominantly out of print or indie decks. I am going to show now an in-print and mass market one, but you know, support your indie creators when you can, because they're super important. But the final one is show a tarot deck you think everyone should have. The reason that I struggle with these questions is because I'm too literal, and I don't think everyone should have any deck, because there are going to be people out there who really don't like this, or they really don't like the animal that's represented, or whatever. But if I was gifting a deck to someone and I knew they were okay with the animal, I would give this time and time again. And then you can see the thingy card pop out the front. A friend of mine got her sister to make this for me. They'd never made a tarot bag before. Is it not the cutest? It was part of a birthday present. They bought me the deck, and their sister, who's also a friend, but I know them through the other one, made me the bag to go with it. So yeah, this is Tarot of the Pagan Cats. I have a very old review of this, which people still tell me they really enjoy it. I think I laugh a lot. I like to laugh and have fun anyway. That is part of why I'm on YouTube. It's not as serious as some of my other spaces and offerings. But yeah, this deck brings me so much joy. But also it reads so well. I feel like it's a nice enough representation of 𝗺𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗺, but a departure from being a clone. And that's really a sweet spot for me, because whilst I have 𝗺𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗺 as definitely a significant facet of how I read, I have some expansions and just some of my own ways of reading. I'm quite an intricative reader in that capacity, although I will honour the deck and especially what the imagery is saying. I don't like to sort of contrast the imagery, which is why I've got a selection of decks. But anyway, I love this. I freaking love cats, okay? I have several cat decks. In fact, I have another cat deck on my mass market wish list, but I won't buy it for myself because I know that I won't use the guidebook, and it feels, mass market decks feel kind of pricey now for bad cardstock, big boxes and guidebooks that I'm not going to use anyway. But I really love that one that's got 𝗵𝘁𝗄𝗏𝗺's art on it. He does the indie decks like 𝗵𝘁𝗁𝗄𝗏 and Thorn and stuff. But anyway, we're talking about Tarot of the Pagan Cats, and I freaking love this. The artwork on it brings me so much joy. And whilst the little guidebook that comes with it is nothing to write home about, if you pay attention enough to the imagery and spend time really immersing yourself in it, there is this pagan, there is this witchy, there is this symbolic element throughout that I love. And I've said it many times before, I struggle with human decks. I have a fair enough collection of them now, but I do get distracted by seeing people that are familiar to me. And the thing is, as someone who sees clients in two different, I suppose, realms of working with people, I see a lot of people, whereas this is just fun. It's the wizard cat. And it's a nice play between natural cat behaviour with just a few gimmicky humanised facets of it. I really appreciate this. I did not want to see a stabbed cat. And also I think that it's more meaningful for a suit of communication than such a physical embodiment, which forever and eternally irritates me about the 𝗺𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗺 10. I have so much fun with this deck. I don't know what to tell you. It's got the funniest devil card in the whole entire world, which is what I laugh about predominantly in my review of it. I feel like the courts have done a great job at really trying to express some energy rather than being really still. And each of the knights has a different animal. So again, it's trying to remind you of the sort of energetic embodiment. It goes for what I feel are quite recognisable, quite familiar animals for the majority of people. I just think it does a really good job at what it's meant to do, which is try and explain the tarot visually. And whilst I think you can only get the borderless edition of this now, at least online, that probably makes quite a lot of people happy anyway. Thank you. I mean, I had to end the video on this because it's fucking hilarious. If you're a bad kitty and you go to hell, according to the pagan cats, you go all sorts of rabbit. What happened? I really would love to hear from the creators what happened here, and not because I dislike it. It just feels mildly out of place, but it's so much fun. And I do think it gives it a more jovial sense to the devil, which isn't without merit. The devil certainly has, like most cards, there are a few, I don't know if I would call it benefits, but certainly like reasons we do things, right? Even if the things aren't necessarily for our benefit long term, it would be silly to just pretend that we didn't do things for particular enjoyments or reasons or whatever. Like, things can be seductive. These are not seductive, may I add, just to be clear. Anyway, thank you to 𝗪𝗺 for creating this 5 tarot deck challenge. Sorry mine was probably longer than it should have been, but I hope that you folks enjoyed this, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.